The leadership board and the board of directors are very excited to hear what you have to say.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions prepared about your book, but I have a feeling we're just going to have a conversation.
Whatever.
Okay, well, thank you all for joining us. The first question I'll ask you is an easy one. It's you recall in your book the moment that you met Charlie Parker and played clarinet alongside him. He watched you. And you wrote that in that moment you learned a very valuable lesson. And you said, quote, "Being starstruck is for amateurs." So I ask, what advice do you give to me? I imagine I'm in a very similar position that you were when you first met Charlie Parker.
If you don't have the capacity to love, you don't have the capacity to change. You cannot change if you don't have the capacity to love. Because if you have the capacity to love, embrace within your capacity to love will be the inevitable confrontation you're going to have to make. I thought this was blue yesterday when I looked at it, but I made a mistake. It's not blue, it's red. And you're going to have to admit that yesterday when you thought it was blue, you had a defect in your vision. But today your vision is unimpaired, and what you thought was blue is now red. And you have to have the courage to confront yourself.
Well, look, I was wondering, as you're grappling with questions of your legacy, the epigraph of your book, which we all read, I'll read it aloud. "If surviving lions don't tell their stories, the hunters will take all the credit." An African proverb. I'm wondering, generally, what this means to you, who the hunters are, and how is your history being told now differently than you would like it to be told?
The hunters are all of those persons collectively that would deny the factual legitimacy of events that occurred in this country with respect to the institution of slavery. Okay? You didn't have anything to do with that. I didn't have anything to do with that. But that doesn't mean that the institution didn't exist. Okay? So I try to conduct myself where everybody is on the same level. Everybody's on the same page. And the only way we can be on the same page as a country is to recognize how we got to be the way we are as a country. We, regrettably, have had a whole generation of people raised in this country which do not have the slightest idea of the intricacies and the magnitude of the institution of slavery. They have no idea. No idea that this country was built on 300 years of free labor. The wealth of this country was on the backs of 300 years of 24/7 labor. So when people say to me, "You should be grateful," and so forth, I said, criticize. I said, "Excuse me." My first reaction is, I said, my ancestors built this country. I have more rights. I have more credibility to say about what happens in this country than most people. Why? Because my ancestors built this country.
There's a lot of contention right now about the memory of the civil rights movement. I'm taking a class.
What do you mean the memory? Of the institutional memory?
The institutional memory of the civil rights movement.
Mm-hmm.
Its distillation, some might argue, to talking points, phrases that display a very narrow view of what it was. I'm taking a class right now called The Civil Rights Movement in History and Memory, talking about that institutional memory. And as I was reading the epigraph of your book, "The hunters will take all the credit," how would you respond to that, and how would you like the movement to be enshrined in the institutional memory of this country?
first of all, in the English language, there is something called facts. Now, if something is a fact, there is no alternative to the fact. But I see that there's a competing philosophy developing called alternative facts. Well, what's an alternative to a fact?
And in regard to the memory of the movement in particular,
Right.
it's not just the alternative facts, but selective memory.
Oh,
And the prime example we think of today is there's one sentence from a speech that you partially wrote that is taken and inscribed in stone in Washington on the memorial to Dr. King. You know, I have a dream that my 3 little children will grow up in a world where they're judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
Right.
And with that, it seems that the national memory put aside, you know, the promissory note
that's right.
that
That's right.
you know that has come back insufficient funds.
Insufficient funds.
And Dr. King talking about being a conscientious objector
Right.
at Riverside Church on April 4th,
That's
1967.
That's right.
How do you react to that? And how do you want the memory, not just of King, but of these ideas of the movement, to be retold?
I think that it's not accidental that with the combination of great medical support services that I am 93 years old. Sometimes I wake up and I think, you know, there's a reason you have this longevity. And the reason is that you're still around and that you don't have to speak about what somebody told you. You can speak about what you heard and saw yourself. So I say to myself, one of the reasons my longevity is important because I have authenticity. Okay? You're gonna tell me what happened on the March on Washington. I was there.